It's Monday night.
I've been in the game a long time. When a catcher catches the ball and it's strike three, you call the guy out. It's that simple, isn't it?
And if it's Monday, it's the knee jerks.
I'm not going to sit here and rip umpires. But you saw what you saw, clearly saw what you saw. I just saw it for the 10th time. Write it and say something once in a while. Have the nerve to say something.
Detroit sports talk with attitude.
Attitude on this! 1, 2, 3! Attitude!
Coming up tonight, will Big Al guess whose birthday it is? Who are the jerks of the week? What will Eno rant about now? The answers coming up next. Two guys who know Detroit sports. The voice of reason, Greg Eno and Big Al Beaton.
It is actually not Monday, it's Tuesday. We're recording a day later than we have been. It's Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. It's game one of the World Series, but we're here to talk about other things because this is the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al, the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, my co-host, co-creator, co-conspirator. He is also essentially slave to a wiener dog, and that would be Greg Eno of the Winged Wheeler, of Out of Bounds, and numerous places online. Greg, how are you and how is Bean?
Well, I'm not the only slave. There's about 3 of us here in this house that are slaves to that little guy, but he's the head of the household. There's no question about it, as they all are. You know, with your dog,
yeah.
They just they what they say goes, or what they don't even have to talk. They just look at you and make head motions and tell you what they want you to do. So anyway, I am Greg Eno from my Out of Bounds WordPress blog. Check me out there. I'm pretty much there every week. I just posted something yesterday, meaning Monday, about kind of got into a little bit of radio announcing, sports announcing, hockey announcing in particular because of Mike Emmerich retiring.
Yes, that was kind of a shocker, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I just talked about, I just kind of share my memories of what I thought about hockey announcing versus baseball announcing and stuff. Hopefully it was kind of entertaining. So I did that. So yeah, check me out every week there. The Wing Wheeler blog may be sundowning. I think I'm going to do everything in one blog because it used to make sense to do just a hockey specific blog when the Wings were more relevant and competitive, and I was doing more stuff on the blog that wasn't even columns. It was just other stuff. And I'm not doing that right now. So I'm just going to, I think, kind of put everything to the Out of Bounds blog. So find me at on WordPress, thegregor63.wordpress.com, or just thegregor63.com will get you there as well. We have 3 of the 4 teams we're going to talk about tonight: Lions, Tigers, and Red Wings.
Actually, there should be one other thing to bring up because it looks like we're going to be recording. The podcast is going to be released. We're moving days again, actually. So.
Yeah. Tuesdays are like we're going to.
Oh, actually, but like late Monday night, early Tuesday. Probably when it gets
we're going to probably record on Tuesdays from now on. It's easier for. I've got some thought. It's just easier for me here, and also it gives us a chance to catch anything that might happen on a Monday. Sometimes it happens.
Well, when are we going to go back to Wednesdays? Because isn't that when we started? We've almost been through the whole week, right?
I can't remember when.
Well, we used to record at 11 p.m. at night, and I think it was Wednesdays, but hell, that was like a decade ago, so it's all fuzzy to me.
I could be wrong.
Might have been. You're right. It might have been. Hell, if I know at this point, I don't even.
You're
remember.
Right about 11 o'clock, though.
Yeah, it was late.
And we were live.
Yes, we were both really heavy writing back then too, so we were keeping some very weird hours.
And we got a lot of guests to show up at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it was surprisingly so. Well, it was a different era, to say the very least. The web was like the wild, wild west back then. And here we are a decade later, and we're getting old and the show's getting done earlier and earlier. So 11 o'clock, I got to go to bed at 11 o'clock.
Pretty soon we'll be recording at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, we do have that lot to do. But before we do any of it, we're going to play a game that we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get a tummy ache and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how I play this game by now. I'll give Al a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first 2 clues, he'll win not the Civil War chess set. You've heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
He'll win the 13 Years' War chess set, depicting chess pieces depicting the Prussian Confederation and the Teutonic Order. So that'll be kind of fun.
Isn't there a 10 Years' War that has Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler?
That was a book that our friend Jim Brandstatter wrote, I think. Or at least didn't Jim write that? He was a co-author?
I think so.
10 Years' War?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's right.
All right, so I can't wait to get my Prussian war set here. So
yes, this is hinging on this. This person now made his name in the world of baseball. I will tell you that. He was born on this day in 1953, so he's 67 today. Mm-hmm. He was a very good player. Not a Hall of Famer, but probably in the Hall of the Very Good. Mm-hmm. But has also carved out quite a niche for himself in his post-playing days. He played almost exclusively in the National League East, save one season in the American League East at the end of his career. He is an infielder, I will say. It was an infield, I will say that. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because it might give it away, so I'll leave it there.
All right, so an infielder, obviously played in the 70s because that would be, plus you're talking about divisions at that point when you're talking about a guy who would have been in the
70s and 80s.
Yep. Did you say infielder?
Yeah.
And he spent 1 year in the American League East. Hell, that could be even the Tigers for that matter back then. So,
but 16 years in the National League East.
16 years in the National League East. 1 year in the American League East. Huh. Yeah, this must be, I won't say a well-known player if you're giving me such an obscure.
No, I wouldn't say he's not. He was a very good player. He was very good.
Yeah.
Like I say, the Hall of the Very Good, probably.
Yeah. Oh, got 16 years in the National League East. My goodness.
He won. He's an MVP winner. I'll say, and that'll be it for the first clue.
Yeah.
He was an MVP.
I'll just throw it out there. How about George Foster?
No, but good guess. Good guess. Right, he was definitely a contemporary of George Foster for sure.
It has to be somewhere in that era, So I mean, it may come to me. I just had to throw something out there. I didn't want to leave you hanging. I do that enough as it is. So, all right. With that, before we get to question 2, we have a lot to talk about. Obviously, we got when it comes to the Lions, Greg, might as well let's start with them, as they're always a hot topic in this town. As I put it in the show notes, a bad team beat a worse team on Sunday. The Lions pretty much manhandled a 1-win Jaguars team. They beat them 34-16, and honestly, the game was never really in doubt. Once we got into the second quarter, pretty much. And if there was such a thing as a boring Lions blowout, this was it, because we very rarely get to see them. Now, normally, Greg, I get a lot more excited about the Lions playing well. It doesn't make a difference if they beat a good or a bad team. If they play well and win big, I mean, it's usually enjoyable. But I really found this game, Greg, or maybe it's just this team in general. I felt kind of distanced as I was watching. I found myself checking my phone quite often. My attention drifted from the game. I'm sure it will not help the blowout did much. Really, about the only things I really found interesting to watch, at least, was obviously the breakout game of DeAndre Swift. He had 116 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's the first Lions rookie to put that kind of day, 100 yards and 2 TDs since Barry Sanders in 1989. So that was nice. But other than that, what was there really to talk about when it comes to this game? Matt Stafford, a bad Matt Stafford is better than Gardner Minshew, and I think Matt Stafford was average at best on Sunday. The defense played decently, but again, with this huge, large caveat, the Jags are bad, as in they're likely contenders for the first overall pick kind of bad, while the Lions are bad in they'll end up with the 10th overall pick or something like that. Big difference. So I find myself very unemotional about the Lions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a defensive measure or something. I'm subconsciously saying I'm not going to get too emotionally involved with this team right now because I don't like the coaching staff. I don't like the front office, and I just don't see this team going where it needs to go with the people who are running it. So I find myself kind of like, whatever, when it comes to the Lions on a Sunday, and that's rare for me.
Well, I tweeted out, I said this game was like almost as relaxing as the bye week.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing really to get, your blood pressure up above. I mean, I don't get my blood pressure up with the Lions anymore anyway,
right.
But I pretty much have been on a trial separation with them for years. But I do watch the games because I like to talk about them with you, and there's some morbid curiosity.
Yeah, it's habit more than anything else.
They were, the Jaguars are bad. There's no question about it. I mean, I didn't know much about them going into the game other than the record.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't know how bad they really were until I saw them play Sunday. And there's not much going on there in Jacksonville. They've got a little ways to go there, but they're on the schedule you play. You got to win the games, and if you're going to lose to a team like that, then shame on you. But I mean, it's hard. When you play a team like that, Al, that's that bad. You don't really know what to do with that kind of a victory. You're glad you got it. You move on, but it was not. I guess it was a testament to them this time that when they got the big lead, they didn't crumble. They didn't self-destruct. They didn't commit any turnovers. I don't think they did anyway. There were no. There was one interception that Stafford threw.
Yeah,
there really wasn't much going on there in terms of. There weren't a lot of bad penalties. There wasn't the typical Lions stuff going on in that game, so the Jaguars were never really in the game. They never really made a threat to get back into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, hats off. They did what they had to do, and that's what you do in this league. You beat 1 in 5 teams, and that's what they did, and that's really all you could say about it. I mean, I will say this: they came off, after a bye week, they did seem a lot more organized. It did seem to be a lot more. Obviously, they played the run a lot better than they ever have recently. They were very, they were very, very tough against the run.
Yeah.
So, it was with Minshew not having a running game to support him, he really was exposed.
Yeah, and you made a good point about the Jaguars and being this kind of anonymous team. The only guy I know on the Jaguars for the most part is Minshew, and that's basically because I watched a fair amount of him. When he played for Washington State as a fifth-year senior, where he played under that air raid offense, and he threw the ball all over the damn place. On Pac-12 after dark, watching those late-night West Coast games. So. They really are an anonymous team, and kind of playing in an anonymous city. You come at Jacksonville. I mean, there's no there. I've been to Jacksonville. I've been to the airport, so I pretty much saw all there was to see in Jacksonville. But it really was. And you said, there was the line shut down the run, and if Minshew doesn't have that kind of support, he's exposed because he was a 6th round draft pick for a reason. The guy, it was expected Minshew was probably going to be a career backup in the NFL, and here he is starting for Jacksonville right now. But defense looked good. Offense was it was nice that they're finally feeding the ball to DeAndre Swift. I think that was the most encouraging thing that they have a high 2nd round draft pick and they weren't using him. So instead of giving the ball to a 35-year-old guy they picked up off the street, Hall of Famer he may be, Adrian Peterson, but still, the Lions seem to have this habit of using high draft picks on their running backs and then not using them. So at least it's nice to see that maybe Swift has finally earned the trust of the coaching staff. But overall, the game itself, it was a snooze fest. Like I said, I found myself switching to the red zone or looking at my phone and oh god, the Lions are still up big. But I think what it really comes down to, Greg, is that I even posted this on Facebook. I'm actively rooting for the Lions to lose at this point because I don't see this regime doing what it needs to do. And I would rather them crash and burn and then muddle along, get 6-7 wins, maybe get to come back for another year, and then we're doing it all over again. I think maybe more than anything else, that's the thing. I think there's a large segment of this fan base that wants that. It says we've seen enough of the Patricia Quinn era. We're ready for it to end. I hope they lose the majority of their games so they'll just clean house. And I think I'm not alone in that sentiment.
No, in fact, I got the feeling on Twitter as the game, when the Lions were toward the end of the third quarter, still up by double digits. I tweeted, I said, I get the impression that the Lions fans would almost be willing to sacrifice this game if it meant getting Patricia fired.
Yeah, which will lead us to our next topic.
Somebody else replied to me and said, "You're damn right, we would." Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we're going to talk about Patricia in a second, that's for sure. But Swift was, hey, you know, you got to give him. I mean, you know, say what you will about the Lions as an organization, but Swift, you know, looked really good. You know, he was, you know, on the 54-yard run, I would have liked to have just seen him continue to run instead of holding up and trying to juke somebody. But he probably could have got another 10 or 15 yards. But be that as it may, he ran well. He showed, you know, a little bit of why the Lions drafted him to begin with. And, you know, it was good to see. It was good to see a kid get over 100 yards for the Lions, which hardly ever happens. And he did it on only 14 carries, so he was very efficient that way. And, you know, the Galladay was Galladay.
I was just going to say, we need to bring up Kenny Galladay, who had 100 yards receiving and really opens – it makes – the passing game looks completely different when Galladay's on the field.
Right. And so, you know, I thought that, you know, Amendola made he didn't make a lot of catches, but he made one in particular that was kind of big, kept the drive going. And, you know, I think at one point Greg Jennings, one of the color commentators, said that 10 Lions had caught passes, which is pretty amazing. 10 different guys caught passes. Yeah. So that showed that they spread the wealth. And Stafford only completed, I think, 22 passes or something, or 19 or something. Mm-hmm. So for 10 different guys to get that few passes receptions is pretty amazing. So they spread it around. Galladay only had 4 catches. He only needed 4 catches to get his 100 yards. And he made a really good leap and a grab on the one bomb there where they had the free play. And that's what Stafford did. What you usually do when you get a free play is just heave it downfield and hope for the best. Yep. Galladay, you know, jumped up and got it. Jennings was very complimentary to him about that, comparing him to I can't remember which receiver on the Jaguars who did not do that, and it resulted in I think it was an interception for the Lions. So, or at the very least, it was an incomplete pass. So, yeah, I mean, you know, they did good things against a bad team, and that's pretty much all you can really say.
Yeah, which is essentially why Jim Caldwell was fired, because he beat bad teams too, but couldn't beat good teams, and nothing's changed for the most part. I think the big news out of Sunday, at least before the game, was Sunday morning a report came from CBS Sports' Jason Conforna. You know, he's in the same realm as he's an NFL pundit. And his reports Sunday morning came out was essentially saying, since there's already been house cleanings in Atlanta and Houston, no GMs and coaches have been fired. His question was Detroit next? And he had sources, he claimed, quote, although it has not been expressly conveyed by ownership, several Lions sources believe Week 6 to be a must-win in order to stave off a coaching change. The Lions won. The story was moot, but you'd have to think, Conforna is not known as a guy who's going to make shit up. This guy is a well thought of journalist, access journalist. The guy knows people. And you'd have to think, Greg, if it wasn't coming from ownership, there had to be leaks or sources coming from inside Allen Park for a report like this, because this was not like the Detroit newspaper beat writers reporting this. They don't have the contacts guys like Conforna do. Someone else, there's got to be something going on in the either in the front office or maybe agents that are talking to people in the front office, and they are talking to Conforna saying, the Fords were seriously considering axing Patricia if he lost to the Jags. But I think that also kind of played into the ennui of the fan base after the game, because they saw a lot of people heard this report was all over the news. And I'm sure the fan base was kind of thinking, oh, please let the Jags win so we can just blow this crap up. I guess what I'm asking you, Greg, do you think this was a must-win? Do you believe the Fords would have canned Patricia? And also interesting, Bob Quinn was not mentioned. This was just Matt Patricia getting fired. So do you think this really was a must-win for Patricia, or do you think these reports are overblown?
Oh, boy.
I know, because we're talking about the forwards who don't have an itchy trigger finger. They never have.
Well, right, but a couple weeks ago we talked about this, and I said I don't know. I can't get a read on Sheila or Ham Ford. I can't remember which
Sheila,
order.
I think it's Sheila Ford Ham.
Because because Ford's her maiden name. Because I didn't know enough about her to get a feel. You're right about the family in general has been historically slow to. Yeah. Although Martha didn't take long after she took over for the old man. I think about a year and a half later is when she fired Mayhew and Lawan. But I think that obviously we'll never know. But my theory about this, Al, isn't so much would they have done that, because that now becomes a moot question. What right. is first of all, I will say that it would. I guess it wouldn't have surprised me because I don't know her enough to know.
Right.
And certainly to lose to that team, is especially as bad as I now know they are, to lose to that team, I don't care where you're playing, and especially if they had lost the game after taking the big lead again, because they got up to the 14-3 lead, and had they lost again, then that might have been it. But I'm more wanting to talk about this whole notion of if a guy, to me, Al, is that close. If indeed he's that close to being fired, if you're on some sort of a win this game or you're gone thing, well,
then you should fire him anyway.
There's that, but there's also the thing that says, well, how much job security can you really have then?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna tell me, okay, you win this game or else you're fired. Okay, I win the game. Well, that can't totally take me off the hot seat. It's got to be the seat's still got to be a little warm. If just because I won that game that I had to win to save my job, doesn't mean that I can go out there now and lose 2 or 3 more in a row and be safe. I remember this is going back a long time. I want to say this was 76. Mm-hmm. Rick Forzano lost, split the first 2 games and lost first game, and then already in week 2 he was given he was on notice. Win this game or you're fired. This mm-hmm. was from the old man, Bill Ford. And they won the game, and then they lost the next 2, and Forzano was fired. And there was no secret. I was looking this up via newspapers.com. Mm-hmm. I was reading all the old accounts of this. It's really fascinating to read. I read this like 2 or 3 weeks of this stuff on newspapers.com, and I watched this story unfold. And basically what it was Ford was very open, very transparent. I noticed back then, by the way, that people were a lot more transparent and a lot more candid back than they are now. People really choose their words carefully. Mm-hmm. Back then, they just the reporting. I think it was probably a lot more fun to be a journalist back then because people just let it all out, man. They just did not filter themselves. And Ford publicly said, "Yeah, I told them, you don't win this game, you're fired." And that was even leading up to the game. People knew that if they didn't beat the Falcons, he was going to be fired. Mm-hmm. And they won, and then he was off, but then they lost a couple more, then he was eventually fired. So I don't know what when I read that stuff, that chatter that you were talking about leading up to the Jacksonville game that said Patricia's gone if they lose, I said, okay, fine, but it doesn't mean that if he wins, he's free and clear. They could still go out and be 4-12, and he'll be gone. And nobody's going to remember the Jacksonville game. So it may have taken him off the hot seat for a week, but it just. I agree with you about Lock for. He's not the kind of guy that would throw that kind of stuff out there. I would believe him more than guys on Fox.
Like Jay Glazer? Yeah, exactly.
Well, he or just the guys around the table, Bradshaw and Long.
Oh, those guys. Yeah, and Bradshaw's been almost like every week saying Patricia needs to be fired, which is interesting.
If it would have come from one of those guys, I woun't have given it really any thought. But when it comes from what I consider a legitimate reporter like Conforna, these guys don't see. They don't. It's like in baseball, the who's the little guy with the bow tie, Ken. Rosenthal. Guys like that, they don't, they're not going to put their careers in jeopardy by just throwing stuff out.
Yeah, they're not going to burn sources and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Right. They don't just say stuff for shock value.
Right.
They usually only report stuff when there's generally something, they genuinely have heard something.
And these guys have deep access with almost everybody in their respective leagues.
And Lockenfora has Detroit ties, does he not? Does he not? Did he used to work in Detroit?
No, I think that's Schefter. Adam Schefter does. I think he's the one who went to Michigan.
Okay. I didn't know about Schefter, actually.
Yeah, I think it's Schefter. I know there's like a handful of these guys, Mortensen, Schefter, Glazer, Conforna, a few others, these are all the guys who had the breaking news for the most part. That's their job.
You know what? I'm thinking of Jason Beck in baseball, who's got the Detroit.
Oh, yeah, the MLB beat writer for the Tigers.
But so, these guys like Lockenford don't generally just, I'm going to get some clicks and I'm going to get some traffic on Twitter by throwing this out there. They usually don't do that. So there probably was something to it. I don't think the Lions will make a coaching change in the middle of the season, especially the longer into the season you get. I think that if you get 8, 9, 10 games into it, I don't see any reason to do. I know you can bring a guy in and be an interim. I understand that, but I think, and of course, anybody now would be an interim. Frankly, and anybody's going to be an interim at this point. But I just think they'll write it out with him. I mean, they may win 5 or 6 games this year, and they'll make their determination after that. But I even though I don't know much about Sheila Fordham, that whole pedigree of that family, you're right, is to not necessarily can a guy in the middle of the year or to be impetuous. Although I don't know that this would be necessarily an impetuous thing, because given what's been going on the last 2.5 years. But I still think if they make a change, Al, it'll be after the season. Yeah,
and that kind of leads us into, to paraphrase the immortal God, now all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank, but who was it that said playoffs? We're talking about playoffs. The Colts coach that said that. It was, now I can't remember his damn name. My God, I'm getting old.
Jim Mora.
Yeah, exactly, Jim Mora. And I just found it funny, all of a sudden they're talking about playoffs all of a sudden. It started during the fourth quarter of that game where the Fox crew started saying, look at the Lions' schedule. It's one of the easiest in football, and they might be in playoff contention, after the end of this stretch, and they started talking that up, and obviously we're seeing it talked up on by the Lions themselves because the schedule. There were 2 reasons. They really have their next 6 games are relatively easy. 4 of them, as of right now, only have 1 win each. Falcons, the football team, a.k.a. Washington. That's so weird. Football team. The Vikings and Texans. Of the next 6 games, 4 of them are teams with 1 win. None of them are over 500. I think the best record they have right now is at 500 of the teams they're facing next. And also the fact that there are expanded playoffs this year. There's going to be 1 more team getting in each conference. So between being a little bit easier to get in, having a relatively easy, at least scheduling wise, but the opposition is not very good. Even the Lions may not be good. The other teams aren't either. When you factor those 2 teams in, I think the Lions are probably thinking playoff contention, and there's some in the media saying it's a possibility. I mean, what Greg Rosenthal today said something about that, for example, that, this is a team that salvaged their season, whatever the hell that means. So, but I guess the question is, Greg, is that the Lions may be talking about, if we maybe go 4-2 or something like that during this coming stretch, we're in playoff contention and we'll have an interesting December. But I'm sure the other teams that they're going to be facing on the schedule are looking at the Lions and thinking the same goddamn thing. The Lions aren't exactly a juggernaut, and they are very beatable. You'd have to think, especially the Falcons. My God, the Falcons should have won at least 2 more games, if not for a couple of brain farts. I hate to talk about the playoffs, but I can see why there's some talk because of the scheduling and the expanded playoffs. But God, 1 game. And all of a sudden, and NFL gives me whiplash, Greg, because it seems we go from fire them all 1 week to, they might make the playoffs the next week. I know that's the NFL in general, but just talking about the playoffs with this team right now just seems ridiculous. But the back of my head is saying, the schedule is easy.
Well, but we've been down this road so many times before. These easy games we talk about. That's they did a good job against the run Sunday, but they still don't have a very good front 7. They still don't have any playmakers. Although I thought the secondary played well for the most part. I liked the effort there. I liked some of the hitting I saw. But, they just still don't have a lot of guys that you really game plan for. for at least 1 week, it got the heat off Patricia. And
I don't want that.
On the one hand, it will be fun to see what they do against all these crummy teams.
Well, and that's the thing. I think the Falcons have a crummy record, but I don't think they're a crummy team. I think the best description I've seen of the Falcons is they're the Lions, just like them. Exactly. The Falcons are another team that are kind of been in that limbo. Other than the Falcons, though, have bit the bullet and fired their coach and general manager. But their play has been very, very similar. So ever since they've been on a downhill trend ever since they made the Super Bowl a few years ago. So
yeah. Well, they're very similar in the sense they both have older quarterbacks who have been around forever.
That are not great, but good.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And at least, Ryan did get them to a Super Bowl for sure. But I look at he and Stafford is both kind of the same kind of quarterback. Their career trajectories have been, first of all, Ryan came in 2008, Stafford came in 2009, so there's that similarity. And they've just been kind of the same kind of guy to me. I mean, I think obviously Ryan's had a little more success in the playoffs, but they're kind of the same, kind of like the Phillip Rivers scenario where they're there a long time. They pile up a lot of numbers, but they're not guys that you probably would like to have 5 or 6 guys at least other than them. Yeah. But at the same time, you'd rather have them more than 5 or 6 other guys below them. So they're probably right kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Good quarterbacks, not great quarterbacks. Yeah. But good quarterbacks.
And that's interesting when you bring up the quarterbacks is I don't even know who's quarterbacking the football team right now because I know they benched Dwayne Haskins. I don't even remember who's backing him up at this point. And then for the Vikings, you have Kirk Cousins, who was, talk about a guy. No, there's a guy. Kirk Cousins is either great or god-awful. There seems to be no in-between with him. And obviously, Texas have, Hopkins? DeAndre Hopkins, which is a decent quarterback. So the Lions should win at least a couple of these games alone just because of Stafford, especially against Washington. I think you said it, we've heard the same song and dance from this organization over and over and over and over. They continue to talk a good game, and now they win a game against a really bad team, and now they're talking about, well, now if we have a run, we can make the playoff, at least make a run towards the playoffs. And this is a fan base that is, essentially has the philosophy is that, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 50 times, shame on the goddamn Lions. That's essentially what it is at this point. This is an organization, even though the majority of the players had nothing to do with this, this team lost the benefit of the doubt. God, back in the 90s, for Christ's sake, if you want to go back a while. Hell, back in the 80s, realistically. When they were talking about the schedule and the fact that they could make a playoff run in the fourth quarter of that goddamn Jaguars game, that just rubbed me the wrong way. And it's probably the Lions fan inside of me thinking, again? We're going to be going through this whole bullshit again? They might win a couple games to start to make it the tease that the season might turn around, and then they'll do something goddamn stupid and lose 2 or 3 games in a row, and then we're back to where we were. We're back to square one, essentially. So, I don't know. This team this franchise. I'm just not talking about, the current roster of players, but this franchise as a whole, Greg. Is it possible as a fan base we have Stockholm Syndrome? Would that be a better analogy?
Well, here's the thing, Al. When you've got Detroit's a city that's got 4 teams that the youngest of which is 63 years old, the Pistons. That's the youngest of which. So to be a sports fan in this city is, for a lot of people, is a generational thing. It's been passed down. Fans your age and my age, we're about the same age. Watched sports. Yes, I did anyway. When I was little, which with my dad, I'm sure you watched sports with your dad, and his dad probably got into it via his dad and so forth. It's a generational. It gets passed down. It's being a fan of a team is not just limited to the amount of time that you've been a fan. It's usually because it's just part of your family, your whatever, the people you surround yourselves with, and their families and friends. So you're talking about, the Lions have been in the league since almost, I think, 1934. Everybody's been since the 20s. The Tigers have been in since 1901. So there's a lot of years between those four teams of, we're not talking about new fan bases that have only been around for teams that have only been around 40, 50 years. These teams have been around a long time. And so, this is ingrained. And like me who used to really take these Sundays and really take them to heart and really let it ruin my mood and everything. I'm way past all the teams, frankly. But, in my 30s and even in my 40s a little bit, I was, it still used to bother me. And now I just kind of I watch. If they lose, they lose. They win, they win. I mean, it's kind of nice to have that feel. I feel sorry for people who are like 20 years younger than you and I are, that are in their 30s, late 30s or early 40s, and are kind of like, still taking it to heart, still really gnashing their teeth and really getting into it and really thinking this team's, is a real organization to follow and they're really going to do something one day. I personally don't think they'll ever do anything, but there's just something there for us to talk about. We've been talking about them as we've been talking about all the other sports teams around here for 11 years. We'll talk about them too. Why not? And like you said, I'm not sure if you said it when we were on the air or before we were on the air, that they're just not as much fun to talk about when they're doing well. They're more fun to talk about when they're, blowing games and winning up.
So, think about it this way, Greg. When I became a fan in 1970. That was when they made the playoffs and lost that 5-0 game. That's one of the few times as a fan I actually cried, but I was only 8 years old. But think about it this way. When I became a fan of the Lions in 1970, their last championship had been 13 years earlier in 1957. Think of that now. Go back 13 years. That means that's 2007. I mean, when we became fans of the Lions, they were still a very good team well into the 60s. They had, if they hadn't been in the same division as the Packers, they probably would have. Right. They might have won another championship or two.
Yeah, right.
So there at that point, the team still had the shine, still had a legacy, and William Clay Ford was, very a young owner at that point. But now we're talking so many decades later. It's just amazing to me at this point that there is actually a youngish fan base of this team, considering they've done nothing. For the last time this team was even remotely successful for a relatively sustained period of time, you would have to be, think about it, would be the mid-90s from about 91 to about 97. So there's a complete, you'd have to be 30-some years old. If you're under 40, you probably don't even remember that.
Well, I think also they've been just, at times, Al, just good enough.
Yeah.
To kind of, just when like the depths of 0-16, the depths of 2-14 a couple of times, and then they've risen. Well, that's what the NFL is designed to do. It's designed to bring teams back quickly, but they've been just, they've made playoffs just enough, and teased you in years where they haven't made the playoffs just enough to make some fans think, a lot of fans think, that there's something there. Maybe there's a there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of rekindles, we start the whole cycle all over again. And, but it really is fascinating. I mean, I don't know, but what would you expect though? I mean, are you suggesting that in other cities that the stand, well, not forget the COVID thing, but the stands would be empty, or that you only get half, the stadium would be half full? I mean, the last time the Lions ever did anything like that was like in the Darryl Rogers era, because they were so boring. But I don't know of any scenario where the Lions, I can't remember the last time the Lions home game was not televised.
It's probably been a good decade, because I remember having to scramble a few times back when I was writing. But we're talking back in the mid 2000s when the Millen era was really getting bad, and there were some times where Ford Field wasn't filled out. But we haven't seen that in a very long time. But it's.
They used to sell out the Silver on that. 80,000.
I know. Hell, I used to go to the damn Silver. Yeah. In a lot of ways, what's another thing, I kind of miss the Silver Dome. That was a fun stadium. But regardless of all that, it's. the Lions are such a I'll put it this way when it comes to the Lions. I'm going to be 59 years old in like 2-3 weeks. I've accepted the fact, Greg, that I'm not going to see a playoff win in my lifetime. I'm sure as hell not going to see a Super Bowl. I mean, I've pretty much accepted it at this point. It's not going to happen. Greg, we're going to be like those Cubs fans who went, almost a century without a championship. Where people, were born and lived and died and never saw the Cubs win a goddamn thing. I really genuinely believe that's where we're headed with the Lions at this point. I really do. There's going to be generations that have not seen this team win a damn thing of import.
Well, there already is that many people.
Oh yeah, well,
the people that were alive to remember the last championship are dwindling. I mean, those people are in their 80s.
Yeah, 70s.
They're in their they truly remember it, really remember it. Are in their 80s.
Yeah,
and they're dying off. And with even okay, you mentioned the early 90s. You're right. The last playoff win was 91.
91.
We beat Dallas. So you're right.
At least they were making the playoffs every other year back then.
If you were born in 83, 82, 81, you probably remember watching that game on television because you were probably 8, 9, 10 years old. Right. But if you were born after 83, for example, so like you said, if you're 36, 37 years old, if we say, remember the Lions beat the Cowboys? You're like, no. I don't know if I remember watching that game.
Yeah.
That's stunning to me that somebody that old that's working a job, that's making some money, that's probably married and has kids, pushing 40 years old themselves, if you were to bring up the 91 Lions, they would look at you with a blank face.
Yeah. Think of that don't even never watch Barry Sanders run the ball. At least only exposure they really have to Barry Sanders is YouTube videos at this point. Yeah. For anybody, it's like I said, they're 35 years old. So, God damn this franchise. It's, oh my God. All right, one more thing about the Lions before we move on to a slightly more pleasant topics. And Kenny Golladay wants to get paid, Greg, but are the Lions willing? The Lions have yet to extend the contract of their number one wideout, who was in the last year of a rookie contract, which he has greatly outperformed. He came in as a number 3, third-round draft pick, pardon me. And he has greatly outperformed. If there was a redraft of his draft, he would be a first-round pick, probably a top 10 pick. He's played that well. But despite all that, him being obviously the Lions' number 1 receiver, he's a difference maker when it comes to we've seen how much better the passing game looked when he's on the field because he missed the first 2 games of the year and the Lions looked awful on offense. They're at least respectable when he's on the field. But they've yet to even, I don't know if they've had contract talks or if they don't want to give him a contract or if they're just planning on franchise tagging him. Regardless of all that, there's some sort of impasse going on between the Lions and Golladay. Because vast majority of the time, Greg, when a player goes into that last year of his rookie contract, they usually pony up and pay him ahead of time just to get it out of the way, as we've seen with like Matt Stafford and things. But it hasn't happened with Golladay. And after the big game he had on Sunday, we both mentioned he was very good. He had 105 yards receiving. He posted the filing quote on Twitter, Greg. I guess he's also put something similar on Instagram. This shit gonna cost you. Don't let that go over y'all head. So, which is kind of cryptic when it comes down to it. I guess the one thing that the Lions do have in their hip pocket is that they can franchise tag him. But the moment you franchise tag a guy, that tends to piss them off. The players do not like that because essentially it really, yes, they will get a decent payday because I think then if you franchise tag someone, you have to pay them the average of the top 5 of that position in football. But it doesn't give them any kind of security, as we've seen with the Dak Prescott situation in Dallas. Prescott ended up playing this year on a franchise tag. And we saw what happened to him last week. He had a compound fracture of his ankle. He's going to miss the season. Probably won't. Who knows what he'll be like next year? He may have had a a career-threatening injury, something that could alter the trajectory of his career. And Prescott does not have any kind of future security. He doesn't have that a future signing bonus or anything like that he can put in his hip pocket. He's essentially now at the mercy of the Cowboys or free agency if he elects to go whatever way he goes. Franchise tagging a player is a last resort, and it tends to tick him off. So I don't know what's going on here with Bob Quinn and how he's handling this situation. It goes without doubt, I think, especially on offense, other than Stafford, he's your most important player. And it's looking more and more like your most important offensive player is not very happy, and that does not bode well for his future at the franchise. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here, but it just seems bizarre to me, Greg, that Galladay hasn't already signed a contract. He's good enough to get a nice extension. He's young enough to get a good extension. Yet here we are, him complaining on Twitter that he hasn't gotten paid yet.
First of all, the Players Association agreed to that franchise tag. That was
stupid on their part.
Well,
absolutely stupid.
But I mean, that's part of the CBA, and it's in there fair and square. They agreed to it. I know that you're right. The players don't like it when it's they agreed to it, but they don't like it when it's used on them. I mean,
it's essentially the nuclear option for free agency. It keeps them from hitting free agency for an extra year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand, I get it. Maybe it was a poison pill, but they had to swallow it.
Yeah.
In order to get I don't know all the ins and outs of the CBA.
Right. Yeah, but it was probably some sort of compromise, but it was a bad one, if you ask me.
But see, these kinds of things don't happen when you're winning. Yeah. When you're winning, I remember, Ray Scott, our good friend Ray Scott, and we always talk to him about, gosh, Coach, what happened? You guys won 52 games, in 74, and then you came back, you won 40, and then the whole – he said, well, after we won 52 games, guys came to camp the following fall, and they wanted to get paid. That's what Ray said. He said they wanted to get paid. Everybody wanted to get paid. Everybody wanted to, they tasted some success, being held out. They changed ownership. Bill Davidson didn't like, well, what is this holdout stuff? He was, what's that all about? And everybody, he said it created animosity. We weren't the same kind of team in the locker room. Now, of course, basketball's only 12 guys. Mm-hmm. We weren't the same group as a lot of the players were the same, but we didn't have the same cohesion as we had the year before, because everybody was, they kind of got big heads. Even though they didn't even get past the first round, they won 52 games. They took the Bulls to 7, and now everybody wanted to kind of, have a big head, and it just kind of ruined whatever, chemistry they had the year prior. Guys like Galladay, and I agree with you. You got to pay your guys. I mean, you can't keep digging your heels in all the time. Sometimes you just got to, pay your guys. Sometimes you just have to do it. I mean, if you're not going to pay him, then nobody can get paid, as far as I'm concerned, because he's, like you said, after Stafford, he's the most important, certainly on offense, the most important player. Mm-hmm. You saw what the Lions offense looked like without him. I mean, earlier this year was ridiculous. So you have to pay your guys. But this kind of taking to Instagram and stuff like that kind of Twitter and what have you, I don't know what he's doing, but that doesn't happen generally when you're winning. If the Lions were 5-0 or 4-1 or whatever, these kinds of things just kind of all seem to kind of iron themselves out. But when you're losing or you're a part of an organization that hasn't won, hasn't tasted any success, it becomes like fertile soil for you to kind of, especially if you sense, that the coach is on thin ice and the GM is on thin ice, and let's face it, they're on much thinner ice than Kenny Galladay is. That's for damn sure. Yeah. So he can do this. He can bitch and moan and type these ghetto type remarks that he did on which doesn't make him look any smarter, by the way. But whatever, he can do that because he's Kenny Galladay, and the Lions need him way more than he needs them. I'll tell you that, because if they don't pay him, somebody else is going to.
And that's the thing. He's going to win the court of public opinion. The public's on his side, so he's just playing it up.
Of course. Yeah. Well, it's hard not to get the court of public opinion on your side when you're going against the Lions. It's hard. Yeah. It's like the whole Calvin, which I'm tired of. I'm not going to really get into, but the whole Calvin Johnson Lions thing. I mean, whenever if you're going up against the Lions in the court of public opinion and you aren't the popular one, then that says a lot about you, because the team, the fans are generally not going to take the Lions' side.
Right.
A lot of times they will take management's side against a player, but with the Lions, they don't. The Lions management doesn't necessarily get that free pass.
Right.
And they shouldn't.
Yeah. And just pay. Yeah, it really comes down to one thing: just pay the guy. I think we're both in agreement there. Just pay the guy, give him his contract, because they have no receiver. I think the only receiver they have under contract for next year is Cephas, the rookie out of Wisconsin. So they have every other receiver they have is going to be a free agent one way or another. Obviously, they can keep Galladay if the franchise tag, but Marvin Jones Jr. is a free agent, and Amendola is a free agent. Every single receiver they have their contract is up in one way or another. So they really don't have any choice. I just can't believe it's gone this long. Because that's the difference. Galladay is young. He's coming off his first contract. He deserves to get paid. I can understand moving on from Marvin Jones Jr., who's been pretty darn good as a Lion, but he's going to be on the bad side of 30. And you can see his production is starting to decline a little bit. Galladay's
like
still on the upswing.
Kind of a thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as good as Golden Tate was with the Lions, he really has not done much with the Giants, for example, or Philly when he was with them. That's kind of what we saw coming. So, yeah, you don't let guys in their mid-20s who are in the upswing and entering their prime, who are literally one of the few difference makers you have. You just can't piss them off over money. We saw that for decades of this franchise, where they would piss people off over money. Because remember when we were young, when we were kids in the 70s, it seemed like every year they'd have a couple draft picks hold out a training camp for a significant amount of time over money. It happened almost every year. Russ Thomas was in charge. So I don't want to see the Lions get. I'm sure some of this goes back to Quinn's days with the Pats, where they let guys go. They would get to a point with a player and say, "We're not going to pay you. Best wishes. Hit free agency." Again, they're the Patriots with a history of winning playoff games and Super Bowls, and they had no problem getting replacements. The Lions aren't the Patriots when it comes to these kind of things. When it comes to paying your players, I think that we've kind of got the same thing with Graham Glasgow, with how the Lions have said, we're just not going to pay you. We're going to let you walk, even though you've outperformed your contract. You've earned the money. We're just not going to give it to you. We don't think we don't want to pay a guard that much. So they let him walk, and now he's out in Denver playing well. And that's the kind of thing that bugs me. You got to keep some of your guys, and you got to keep the guys you want to keep happy. And the Lions sure have a weird way of doing it. How about question 2 of the birthday game? It's enough Lions, because it's just making us more and more angry.
Because we got to get to other topics here. We do have this 13 years war chess set for you it's up for grabs on this clue. Mm-hmm. He was born in 1953, so he's 67 today. He was a former MVP in the National League East. He's a 2-time World Series champion for 2 different teams. I will say that. Great fielder, 11-time Gold Glove winner. And I mentioned that he has carved out quite a niche for himself in his post-playing career. Long-time broadcasting career for one of the teams he played for.
You said a 1-time MVP.
Yes.
Played in the East. Played in the 70s and the. How about Keith Hernandez?
Yes, very good. I didn't think you had a prayer on that one.
And he was a co-MVP, if I remember right.
Was he?
I think he was, yeah.
Okay, well, who would he have shared it with?
I'm trying to remember. I'd have to break out my phone and ask. Check.
Let me see here. This would have been with the Cardinals. Now that you say that, it does seem. Did he split it with Stargell? Yes, he shared.
Yeah, it would have been 79 then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he shared it with Stargell.
Yeah.
And he was. Hernandez was quite a hitter. Like I say, Hall, the very good. He's in the New York Mets Hall of Fame, but longtime announcer with the Mets with Gary Coleman.
That was kind of tipped me over when you said MVP, longtime announcer, National League East. it kind of whittled it down right there. And also, he was involved in a spitting incident with Jerry Seinfeld. No, with Newman and Kramer.
Right. So anyway, so very good. So you get the 13 years worth chess set featuring chess pieces depicting the Prussian Confederation versus the state of the Teutonic Order. So that'll be quite the chess set for you to break out and to impress your friends.
Yeah, I will set it next to my hat from Harry the Hatter and my shoes from Kenny Shoes. So, all right, so.
Good job.
All right, Greg, let's move on to a bit more pleasant topic with the Detroit Red Wings, specifically what Steve Yzerman has done. Since we last spoke, Greg, and when we last spoke, it was actually pre-draft, and they had just picked up Stahl in a salary dump from the Rangers, who got a draft pick with him. And since that time, he's been pretty darn busy since free agency opened. Essentially, he's become the anti-Ken Holland in free agency, Greg. Obviously, in the draft, they had fourth overall pick. They picked Swedish forward Lucas Raymond, number 4. I can't tell you a damn thing about him, because it's hockey. Hockey rookies, I don't know. The guy's been thought of very well. And if Yzerman likes him, I'm fine with the pick. So we'll just leave that as it is. But he then dived headfirst into free agency, and he signed several solid role-playing type veterans to relatively reasonable short-term deals. I mean, it's fascinating to see some of these deals. Probably, I think the best well-known of them is Bobby Ryan, right wing. He's 33 years old. They got him on a 1-year deal for just $1 million. But some of that played into, he was bought out, I think, by Ottawa. Yeah. So he's got a pile of cash he's sitting on, so the Wings were able to get him cheap. But they also signed center Vladislav Nemenstikov, 27 years old, 2 years, $4 million. Defenseman John Merrill, 28, 1 year, $926,000. Defenseman Troy Stetcher, 26, 2 years, $3.4 million. These are all considered solid NHL veterans, guys who are good in the locker room, and they are definite. I would say they're definite upgrades at the positions where they're going to be playing. At the very least, there are definite roles for these guys. So, like, I think they're expecting that Ryan's going to be a top 6 forward. Merrill's going to be going to play in the second or third pair. So will Stetcher. I mean, these are all relative. These are not old players either. These are not guys other than Ryan. No. These are all guys that are still under 30 years old. They're entering their primes right now, and they're proven NHL players. And it's fascinating how essentially what Steve Yzerman is able to do when it comes. He talks to these guys, and for some reason is able to get. He did the same thing in Tampa, where he was able to get very solid hockey players at damn near bargain rates. Some of these guys, a couple of these are definitely under market, specifically Ryan's, but obviously we said there's a reason for that. But it's the anti-Ken Hollanders. They're all signing these contracts with the knowledge. Yzerman was upfront about this, saying, if I have an opportunity, you might get traded, but it will be to a good team to make the playoffs. If you play well, you'll be able to advance your career. Be either here or with another team. Everybody seems to be fine with that because Steve Yzerman, I guess, his reputation precedes him in the NHL at this point. I guess if you see Steve Yzerman on the phone wanting to talk contract, you're going to talk to him. So it was a really impressive free agency, a week or so of free agency. And let's not even forget about the goalie. The Wings have obviously a massive roster hole at goal. All they have right now is Jonathan Bernier, and all their prospects are a long, if they even have a prospect you consider NHL quality, I'm not sure you could. So they signed 34-year-old Thomas Greiss, who spent the last 5 seasons with the Islanders. He did receive the largest deal of all these guys at 2 years, $7.2 million total. But he's another solid, because goalies seem to age much better than position players do anyway. Goalies stay productive well into their 30s. He has been a very solid goalie. He's not an all-star by any means, but he is a legit NHL goalie, much like Bernier. I think it would be a nice comp. I guess he's similar to Bernier. And considering how bad Jimmy Howard was last year, this is going to be an upgrade as well. So it's fascinating, Greg, to watch a general manager who has a plan, sets out to put that plan in motion and then actually sticks to it and seems to be making forward progress with it. Like I said, no long-term deals, no movement clauses, reasonable money, and the team is better, and he's still trying to accumulate draft assets. He's not giving up assets to get these guys. So, and I think the best thing about this is the Wings aren't going to be historically bad next year. They're probably not going to be a playoff team, but they're going to be far more watchable, far more fun, and we might be able to see these guys help the young core develop into better players. I find very little, I don't think anything to be upset about what the moves Yzerman has made so far.
No, you can tell which GM has not only a plan, but has time to implement that plan.
Yeah, that's the other thing. He has time.
You can tell which guy is not flailing and is feeling the heat and is under pressure to come up with something in a hurry. The thing I really like about all of this traffic in the free agent department last week or week and a half ago was the ages of these guys. You touched on it earlier when you said, Ryan is 33 and Grease is 34, but like you said, goalies do tend to age better than position players. And I'll take the flyer that he took on Ryan. I'll take that because he's had some off the ice issues. Ryan has, and supposedly that's all cleaned up now. I'm sure they did some due diligence on that, but it wasn't a lot of money at all.
And he was a pretty darn good player not that long ago.
Yeah, so. And that to me that's fine. But look, I mean, the Nemesnikov 27, Merrill 28. I'm talking. This is their ages now.
Yeah.
Stetcher 26.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing I like about what he's doing is that usually when you're in a position where the Red Wings are so bad and have been bad for several years, usually when you're in that situation, you do one of two things. Either you end up overpaying for somebody who you end up bidding against yourself and overpaying for somebody who is probably not worth that much and is on the wrong side of the age thing, or you end up giving longer term. Now these guys are all on short term. There's nobody here that was signed for longer than 2 years. Nobody, not even the goalie.
Yep.
Ryan got 1 year, Nemesnikov got 2, Merrill got 1 year, Stetcher got 2, and Grease got 2. Nobody got long term. That's the other thing. People always think in terms of the money, but it's also the term of the contract.
I would be more concerned about length than money more than anything else.
It's really kind of fascinating. And Grease was quoted. He said, "I believe in Stevie.
Yeah.
I believe in what he's trying to do here." And he's done it in Tampa. He took a team that was awful in 2010 when he became the GM, and within 4 or 5 years they were competing for the cup. He's also a very good hirer of coaches. He hired 2 very good coaches in Tampa and made the coaching changes, I think, at the right time also when he did have to make a coaching change. So he's hired good coaches down there. And the team that won the Stanley Cup last month or whenever it was basically mostly the team that he put together.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. So, I think it's fascinating that he was able to attract these guys. Again, these guys aren't stars. When I say attract, I mean, sign these guys for such a short term. That's the other thing. Usually when you bring in guys like this, you have to convince – the only way you're going to convince them to come to a place like Detroit, where Detroit is now, is to give – if you're not going to give them the money, then give them the term. Yeah. But in this case, nothing was more than 2 years. Yeah. And I find that amazing for guys who are in their 20s that he was able to do that. So I wrote a column about this a little over a week ago that basically said that that's the cash that he brings Yzerman to the table. And you mentioned it a couple seconds ago when you said when the phone rings and it's Yzerman on the line, he brings that cred. I mean, he's got that. He's not Joe Dumars who just and is now a GM. He's been a GM now. He's been a GM for a long time. Yeah. And so he's got the track record. People know what he's done. They respect what he's done. And I think he's got, if he talks to those guys the way that he talks to the media and to everyone else, then I can see why they would be attracted to him, because he's a very well-spoken, straight-shooting, no bullshit kind of a guy. He's not gonna give you a line of crap. He's gonna tell you the way it is, and he chooses his words very carefully. He's been one of the most well-spoken athletes I've ever seen in Detroit. Yeah. And so I think that is also part of it, and it's fascinating. And to your point about whether they're a playoff team, I don't know either if they are, but I do know this. They are a lot better now than they were 10 days ago.
Yeah, they were horrible last year, so they cannot help but be better.
Don't forget, this is all. We're only talking about the free agency part. This is going on at the same time, Al, as all these younger players are developing, and he's able to plug these new guys in that he just signed, put a respectable product on the ice with genuine NHL players, guys who are legitimate NHL players. They may not be stars, but they're legitimate NHL players. And they're not, like, to make a baseball analogy, they're not 4A players like that analogy of baseball. These are genuine NHL players. He's able to plug these guys in, and these guys do their thing, while these kids, the kids now, that some of whom have played for the Red Wings, but who haven't played for the Red Wings, are developing in the background. That's exactly what this is all about. He's doing it. This is this is rebuild 101. This is the way that you design it on the chalkboard. This is the way, you talk about designing plays on the chalkboard. And, gee, I wish we could run the plays like we run them on the chalkboard. He's running this exactly as you put it on the chalkboard. This is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And you couldn't have asked for a better. I know he got a lot of high marks around the league for what he did, and he did it in a relatively short period of time too. He did it all within a weekend, essentially. He did all these signings within a weekend, and he got some help on the blue line. He got some help up front. He got a goalie. And he did it. He didn't spend a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I tell you what, I would be if I was in that organization. I would be thrilled. If I was the Chris Drapers of the world and the Patty Verbeeks of the world, who are helping him and on Verbeek, assisting him from the GM side, and Draper with the player development side, I would be. I'm thrilled that he's. It takes a lot, because what it does too, Al, it takes a lot of the pressure off these young kids to produce right away. When you've got genuine NHL players in there that are kind of holding down the fort, holding the fort down, while these other kids can kind of get their sea legs a little bit. That's what the Chris Drapers of the world love to see, because they don't have to draft these kids and then feel like they have to fast track them to the NHL if they don't feel like these kids aren't ready. Yep. If they don't feel like these kids are ready. So that's what this does as well. It buys time for the younger kids to if they need to take a little more time to develop, then so be it. Yeah.
And I have to call you out on one thing. You mentioned Pat Verbeek, and you didn't call him the little ball of hate. One of the best nicknames in sports history. So, but yeah, it's without a doubt, this is. It's nice to have a team in this city that has a plan and as you put it, he put it on a chalkboard. I say he put it on a piece of paper in ink. The way this is working out with him, he hasn't had to make any. Obviously, it's not all going to be unicorns and rainbows. It's off to a very good start, and there will be some hurdles and speed bumps along the way. But I have the utmost confidence in Steve Yzerman, and I don't have that kind of confidence in the rest of the GMs in this town, which brings us to another GM who is, I won't say he's under fire on the hot seat, but there are a lot of question marks about him, even though he did get a contract extension for an unknown length of time and an unknown amount of money in Alabama and the Tigers, because with the Tigers, Greg, there have been 3 confirmed managerial interviews. They can't talk to A.J. Hinch or Alex Cora yet because they are officially under suspension until after the World Series, which, as a matter of fact, has just started. It's in the first inning right now. Go Rays, because my dad's a big Rays fan. But be that as it may, the Tigers have conducted 3 interviews so far. One non-ex-Tiger, I should say. That would be current Royals bench coach Pedro Grifol. Who is, he's been interviewed. I guess he was a candidate during the last round that Ron Gardenhire ended up getting the gig. Griffel has spent 13 years in the Mariners system as a scout coach and manager, which is one thing supposedly Al Avila is looking for, but he has been on the Royals big league staff as the bench coach for a couple years now. Interviewing that have Tigers ties. We have the first name to come out was George Lombard, who has been the Dodgers first base coach, I think, for the last 5-6 years at this point. He's been with them during this entire run they had as one of the elite teams in the National League. Lombard is a former Tiger. He spent 72 games with them in the dark days of 2002. he is seen as an up-and-comer. He has interviewed for other jobs in the past, but has yet to take a job. But it's also interesting that he's still a first base coach. He's not a bench coach. He doesn't have any minor league. I don't think he has any minor league managerial experience, but he is considered to be a manager in waiting. The other man mentioned, I think, is the most best known to Tigers fans, and that would be the current Yankees hitting coach, Marcus Timms. Not Timms, Marcus Timms. He was a Tiger from 2004 to 2009. He had some very, very, very good years as a role-playing outfielder. The guy, as Rod Allen, the term "country strong" came from Marcus Timms. He was a slugger. He's been the Yankees hitting coach for the last few years, and he has reportedly interviewed twice so far. Again, though, I don't think he has any managerial experience, but he does have a lot of instructional experience and has been with the Yankees for several years at this point. I don't know where this is heading at all, Greg, because we really can't say for sure if the Tigers have any interest in the two big names in Hinch and Cora until after the World Series is over. But it is interesting that they are moving forward, and I think all the guys that they've talked to so far are all considered, they're not reaches, I think would be the best way to put it. These are all guys who have interviewed for managerial posts and are all, I think, believed to be sooner or later will get a managerial job. I don't know what direction they're going to go. It wouldn't kill me if they hired any of these guys at this point, because who knows, realistically. All I want, Greg, is a manager who was analytically oriented. I am tired of old school guys. And to Ron Gardenhire's credit, as you saw by his numerous use of shifts, he was buying into it. I don't want any more Jim Leylands as the manager. As much as I liked Jim Leyland as a manager, he's not who you need in today's game when it comes to analytics, because Don Kelly doesn't bat leadoff in today's games the way he would see Leyland do it back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I want someone who younger, analytically oriented, and maybe has a little bit of managerial experience, and for the most part, all three of these guys fit the bill.
Right. I think that I think Gardner's kind of the last of that breed. I think you look around baseball, Al. I don't know that you see a lot of his ilk. Maybe you
managers are getting younger. They really are.
Yeah, right. Maybe you put Joe Madden in there only because Joe's been around a long time. I don't know that Joe Madden is necessarily the same type of manager as Gardy or Leland. No,
I would know. He was far more. He was using openers for it was cool.
So it's only his sheer age that would put him in that group.
Exactly.
Other than that, you're right. You look around baseball, and you're right. Managers are getting younger and younger. GMs are getting younger and younger. People in the front office are getting younger and younger. Everybody's in their 40s and late 30s.
Yeah, but look at the World Series right now. What's it? Kevin Cash and Dave Roberts. Both guys in their 40s. If Cash is even that old.
Kevin Cash is amazing. I usually don't give a lot of credit or a lot of blame toward managers, but this Cash guy is just, what he does down there is if you look at his what he's done in Tampa since he's been the manager.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
He is really good. He's the kind of guy that if he ever became available, I'm not sure what his contract extension or situation is, but the Rays better have him locked up because he's the next big thing to me. Yeah. I think he's the next guy that's going to be. He'll manage another 20 years. He's young enough. He's I just think he's just got that. I don't know what it is. He's just got that. Now, he could go to another team and fall on his face, but I just don't see it. I think that this is the kind of guy that's going to be managing a long time, and it may not always be in Tampa, or he may, but it may be where he goes somewhere else. But he's just I can't say enough about him. I just think he's terrific.
Yeah, so I enjoy watching the Rays play. I like the way they play the game of baseball. They do play it in a more modern way. Walks and home runs. That's their offense. That's the modern way at this point.
Right.
But well, let me ask you something else about all this. Yeah. There is a monkey wrench in all this. The Chicago White Sox, who didn't fire. They went their separate ways in Rick Renteria. And what gets me is we're talking about we want a team that we want them to get a younger, analytically oriented manager. Yet the White Sox want to interview Tony La Russa, who's 74 years old. I just don't get that one bit. I mean, that's a team that is just built with young players ready to win now, to find a Kevin Cash type manager, and they're talking to the old school Tony La Russa, who has said some problematic things when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter and kneeling and during the national anthem, things like that. I don't see a 74-year-old Tony La Russa gelling very well with 25-year-old ball players. That makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what the White Sox are thinking and even talking to him. They haven't hired him or anything, but even talking to Tony La Russa makes no sense at all.
Well, I saw a report that said that he was considered the leading candidate.
That's
nuts. He was not only with, I mean, because why else would you interview him if he wasn't a top candidate?
Yeah.
Why else would you go? I mean, is Bill Veeck still owning the team? I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, like you said, and it's not like they need some sort of publicity stunt or something.
No,
they are, like you said, they are a team. Now they in the 60-game season, they probably overachieved. They had a big start, they got up to a big time slump and then lost in the playoffs. But they are, you're right, they are a team that's definitely what you would say is on the rise as opposed to on the descent. There's for sure. I mean, I think we can agree they are on the rise.
Yeah, they're reaching the end of their rebuild, ready to win.
I'm not sure what the first thing, but aside from that, if they're not going to hire him, why even talk to him?
Yeah.
If he's not indeed a top candidate, why even do this? Yeah. Which makes me think that the only reason that they are talking to him is that he is the top candidate. Because you don't bring a guy like that out of mothballs for a token interview. I mean, they've got to be thinking about him now. Obviously, the age thing is certainly a factor. I mean, there's no question about that. But it's also the fact that he hasn't managed in a long time. And I know he stayed close to the game. He stayed in front offices, and he's not like he's gone fishing somewhere. I understand that. But, gosh, I just,
The other thing that bothers me about this is that you're talking a 74-year-old man who in today's environment would be considered high risk to coronavirus. And he wants to get back into a high-stress, big-time travel job in today's environment? That's crazy to me.
The whole thing is nuts. It's the same reason why Gardenhire got out of the game.
Exactly.
And then he's that much younger than La Russa is.
Well, actually, he's about 10 years younger than La Russa.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's
because the White Sox should have the pick of managers. They really should. They're talking to La Russa.
The pick of managers, and they it's beneath them to, and it's beneath La Russa too, frankly. If this is just going to be I hesitate to call it a publicity stunt because that's a little too strong. But if they're just, I don't know. You have made an excellent point, by the way, about the health thing. But taking COVID out of the mix, let's pretend like it's not even happening. Why would he even consent to? First of all, I get the impression that he reached out, that somehow he let it be known that he wants to manage again. That's the only thing I can think of. Is that he lets somebody know, I want to manage again. Okay. Now, why the White Sox? Why the White Sox are? Shame on them if they're going to put him through, and the franchise through this mockery. If nothing's going to come of it, they almost put themselves in a position where they almost have to hire him now. Because if you have a guy like that, and you just say and he was just one of many candidates. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, then again, it's the White Sox, and I don't get a lot of things that franchise has done over the decades, even though they've had their fair share of success now and again. But yeah, this makes absolutely no sense at all, especially for the only reason the Red Sox might be a better gig is just because it's a bigger budget team. But the White Sox are still a big. That's the other thing that's always bugged me about the White Sox, Greg. They're a big market team that acts like a medium market franchise. They're in freaking Chicago, yet they spend like they're Cleveland, which has never made sense to me. So a lot of things that franchise doesn't make sense.
And they were like that when the Cubs were down. When they were basically, they could have owned the city.
Exactly.
They still didn't really. I mean, they won the World Series in 2005. That's true. But you're right. They've been a kind of perplexing franchise over the years. It has been odd. And frankly, like I said, I don't know why they even fired Renteria. I wasn't that enamored with him to begin with, but I think they stuck with him this long, and they finally made the playoffs. So why not keep him around? So I don't get that one either. But
that's all. I'm gonna be very interested to see where this ends up. If it's Tony La Russa, there'll be a laughing stock. At least if people, at least anybody with two brain cells to rub together anyway. All right, Greg. With that, since I've already answered the question, so we don't have to go to question 3 of the birthday game, I think it's time to wrap things up. So let's go to Jerk of the Week. Who you got?
Well, you kind of ruined my Jerk of the Week because
I'm sorry.
No. I was essentially going to make it the White Sox for bringing this whole La Russa thing up. I couldn't. I'm not going to relitigate it because we just talked about it a couple of seconds ago. But when that news came out, it was just. I'm sorry. I can't abide that kind of a thing. That just I don't like that kind of stuff. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to give the White Sox, and I'm not going to give it to La Russa necessarily, because even if La Russa approached them, the White Sox still had to be the ones to say, okay, we'll talk to you. They could have politely declined. So I'm going to give it to the White Sox.
It's bonkers. We're even talking about Tony La Russa in 2020. It really is. I mean, he's got a Hall of Fame resume as a manager. He should be living off his laurels, like I said, having a cushy front office job, which is what he's been doing for the last decade or so. Coming back to a manager, it makes no sense at all. All right, my Jerk of the Week, very relevant with the Big Ten's coming back to play football this weekend, which is also interesting in that might as well just touch on it a tad. Obviously, the University of Michigan is coming back to play football on Saturday. And today, Washtenaw County has issued a stay-at-home order for all University of Michigan students because they had a massive spike in coronavirus cases. Yet, there's one exception? Athletes. They can still play sports. Go figure. But which leads me to my Jerk of the Week, Florida Gators head coach Dan Mullen, who had the most irony-filled week of any big-time coach I can remember in some time. And college coaches have been very, very weird and problematic during this whole damn thing with their actions and what they say, or even just keeping a goddamn mask on. But anyway, Dan Mullen, we're going now a week ago Saturday. They lose to Texas A&M, and in Texas, they're allowing people in the stands. I think they probably had about a crowd of 20,000 or so. It was probably about a third to a quarter full. In the post-game press conference, Mullen complained that the fans in the stands gave A&M home field advantage. Well, obviously, since Florida, the state of Florida has an insane governor in Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis is just throwing the doors wide open, says, you want to fill up a stadium, you can fill up your stadium. And to like Dolphins' credit, they have refused to do it. But Mullen campaigned for the swamp to be opened up and said he wants to see 90,000 fans in the swamp, which the following Saturday. Mullen on Monday, he's in a press conference. He says, we are a model of safety. And he doesn't back down on the 90,000 people in the swamp statement. He wants a giant crowd in the stadium. Tuesday, Gators have to close the facilities and pause all football activities because they have a team-wide COVID-19 outbreak. Wednesday, Florida's game with LSU, which was going to be one of the biggest games of the weekend, was postponed. Mullen issues the boilerplate, I'm sorry if you were offended by my 90,000 people in the stands comment. Apology. No, it really was, I'm sorry if you were offended. That's exactly what it said. We're moving on to Friday. Gators game at Missouri gets pushed back a week because obviously they had another game, the LSU game postponed. And then on Saturday, guess what happens? Dan Mullen announced he was COVID-19 positive. you couldn't write this story in Hollywood. They would say it was too unrealistic. That from one Saturday you have a big-time college head coach campaigning to have his 90,000 capacity stadium filled up, to a week later he is sick with the coronavirus. So my jerk of the week is Dan Mullen. I would actually add vast majority of football coaches in general, because they really all seem to treat COVID-19 as just something we can just power right through, or if we ignore it, it's not going to affect us. Or, you know how football coaches are. We're just going to fight. We're just going to go, and we're just going to not stop, and it's not going to stop us. Yet pandemics don't work that way. So, so the whole thing was ridiculous. And watching Mullen essentially just fall down the stairs day by day, it would be funny if it wasn't so damn stupid. So my jerk of the week is Dan Mullen, and I would say college football coaches in general, because ever since the pandemic started, coach after coach after coach has either done or said something very problematic when it comes to COVID-19. It's ridiculous. Yep,
good call.
All right, with that, let's wrap it up, Greg.
Sure. I want to remind everybody to read me at Greg Eno, the Gregor63.com, my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this. And thank you, Al, for making now Tuesday nights so gosh darn fun.
Yes, indeed. That's a reminder. We are going to be recording on Tuesday nights. Even though I probably won't, I won't change the opening show that we've been using for years. It says Monday, but we'll probably be recording on Tuesdays. That means the show will go live probably late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, depending on how long it takes me to edit. So we'll.
And where can we find the show, Al Beaton?
Of course, we are on pretty much any place that has a podcast that serves up podcasts, a podcatcher. We're on it. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play. We're on Amazon Music. Radio Public's another one. Pretty much any place that gives off, that serves up podcasts, use that app. Search the Knee Jerks, Eno and Big Al, or even the Knee Jerks is usually enough. Just listen to your heart's content. Also, the kneejerks.net is essentially the homepage. That's where you'll find all the show notes. You can actually right-click on the link and directly download the podcast if you were on a computer. And please, like, listen, subscribe, as they say. Was it punch that like button, recommend, all that kind of reviews, all that stuff. Just spread the word, say good things, hopefully. If you've been listening this long, I would hope you feel that way. So, with that, I think it's time to get the hell out of here.
I'm having trouble understanding that.
As for some reason, my Alexa just can't. It just got disconnected from the internet. So that's a first. Oh God, because I have a house full of all that stuff. So go figure. That's a first for the podcast. But with that, we'll be back in a couple weeks, and we'll have the Big Ten will have started by that point. The World Series will have ended. And who knows what's going on in the lines? Because honestly, Greg, all there's going to be to talk about from here on out is football. When you think about it, right. Because the NBA and the NHL probably won't be starting until January. College basketball will probably be late November at the earliest. So it's Lions or bust from here on out, people. Just don't get ready. I'm warning you now. So with that, until 2 weeks from now, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.